There's a lot of misconceptions surrounding the Sarasota real estate market. Buyers believe or hope to believe that the market is weak and whatever offer they submit for a home will just automatically be accepted with open arms from the sellers. Now, sellers, on the other hand, they believe that the market is still just as strong as it was during COVID and that they shouldn't have to reduce the price of their home at all. And the weird thing is, they're both kind of right. Let's talk about it. What's up, guys? If you're new here, my name is Zach Payne and I'm a born and raised Sarasota local and now second generation realtor right here in the Sarasota area. And over the past 5 years, I've helped over 100 families from out of state relocate to the Sarasota area. And it's been my job to help them make informed and competitive offers on homes. Because my finger's kind of been on the pulse of the Sarasota real estate market over the last 5 or 6 years and even way before that, I've seen the shift our market is doing, and it's important that you see it too if you're considering buying a home here in the area. Section 1, the misconception. Now, there's a lot of misconception around the Florida real estate market. You'll see YouTubers in the mainstream news try to convince you that the market is gonna crash and burn. Let me tell you right now, most of it is just for clicks and views. Negativity in a title will always get more clicks than positivity. It's kind of the sad world we live in. People will take the one struggling subsection of a market and kind of paint it with this broad tip brush, saying that all of Florida is doomed. And this is kind of damaging information because what it does is it sets up this unrealistic expectation for buyers coming in. Here, let me give you a firsthand example. I had buyers reach out to me 6 months ago and they were relocating from the New Jersey area to escape the harsh winters. I'm sure a few of you can relate. They had just sold their home for full asking price in 3 days with multiple offers on their home. So actually used to a strong market. They've been watching the news and heard about the kind of crashing Sarasota market and figured now would be a good time for them to buy. Now, when they originally reached out to me, I explained to them that the Sarasota real estate market that they've heard of is not the same as the one that's actually existing right here, right now. I explained that the market is very local and doesn't follow most other areas' trends. I informed my buyers that a nice move-in ready home with a pool, which is exactly what they were looking for, was still really desirable and the demand for a home like that still exists. At the time, I thought that they kind of understood me and we started searching for a home for them. Well, about 4 weeks later, the perfect home for them popped up on the MLS. I sent it over to them. It was an early 2000s built former model home with a ton of upgrades and a really big, beautiful pool overlooking a big backyard. They loved it, and it was listed for around $800,000, and they said that they wanted to put an offer in on it. So naturally, I just got started with running all the recently sold comps and setting up an offer strategy for them, and that's when they said to me, we want to submit an offer for $700,000. Keep in mind, similar comps in the neighborhood had sold for $765,000, $780,000 even. I asked them where did you come up with this number? And they said, we just figured we'll start low and see where we end up. Now, I told them, it's okay to submit a low offer so long as you kind of have data and reasoning to back it up. If you're just shooting low just to hopefully meet in the middle, you can kind of run the risk of offending a seller and them just declining to work with you altogether. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. It's my job to advise and at the end of the day, kind of do exactly what a buyer tells me to do. So I submitted the offer for $700,000 and a couple hours later, the listing agent gave me a call and said that his sellers were so offended by the lowball offer that they didn't even want to counter back. They said to just look elsewhere. Well, as it turns out, there weren't as many homes that fit the buyer's criteria as they originally had thought. They ended up coming back to that same house with a new offer a week later, this time $65,000 more than their previous offer at $700,000. The sellers at this point knew how badly, my buyers wanted the home, and they countered back at $780,000, which my buyers accepted. See, they lost all their negotiating power just because they thought the market was so bad in Sarasota on what a few other YouTube channels were talking about in the news. Had they listened to me, who is actually selling and helping people buy homes every single day in this market, and positioned themselves differently, they probably could have gotten that home for $765,000 or $770,000. But because the seller knew that they came back and knew how few similar homes were on the market, they had all the power over my buyers. As much as I tried to warn my buyers about this possibility, at the end of the day, I'm just an advisor. I'm not gonna force anyone to do anything. And you know what's crazy? Believe it or not, this has actually happened a few times. Another incident happened just a few weeks ago. I had buyers interested in a newer built 5-bedroom pool home way out east. The property was listed at $875,000 and the buyers offered $840,000. This time it was actually a totally reasonable offer and it was pretty strong, as a matter of fact. There were comps supporting an $825,000 offer, but they decided they wanted to go a bit higher to guarantee an accepted offer. To our surprise, the sellers countered back at $870,000, only $5,000 off the original asking price. This time it was my buyer who was so offended. He said they're clearly being unreasonable and not interested in selling the house. Let's go withdraw and go somewhere that will actually appreciate our offer. Again, I urged these buyers to take a moment to see what else was on the market before making any big decisions. After a few days of looking around, my buyers realized the same thing as my previous buyers did in the other story. There really wasn't anything else in the market that was to the level of this home. So they came up to $850, and this time their offer was accepted. See, there's a common theme to both of these stories that I want to point out. Both of these buyers had very reasonable criteria for a home search. It wasn't anything super crazy like, 10-acre home in the middle of downtown. But both of these buyers found very limited inventory for the type of homes they were looking for, which kind of brings me on to my next point. The market inside of the market. Now, I'm sure you've heard the saying, real estate is all about location, location, location. But every market is the same way. You could argue that there are almost 5 or 6 different markets, even within the Sarasota market alone. Here, let me give you an example. There's the single family home market versus the condo market, which are completely different. Then you have the waterfront luxury market, which is totally different from the single family market. Well, then you have the northern Sarasota versus the southern Sarasota market. You even have the move-in ready home versus the dated fixer-upper market. You've also got the new construction market versus the resale market. And in some instances, you even have different markets based on the neighborhood you're in. Each one of these markets moves in different ways and is totally disconnected from the rest. So one of the next things that I want to talk about is what to expect when looking for a home in Sarasota. Let's start with the single family market. So let me just give you what the most desirable type of property that I get most commonly described to me from most of my clients. It's a single family home. It's updated and move-in ready. It's got that light, bright, coastal Florida feeling with tons of open windows and open floor plan where the kitchen and the living room meet. Ideally, it's 20 to 35 minutes away from the beaches or closer. You want a 3-bedroom or more and, at least 2 bathrooms and a pool with a nice outdoor sitting area. Did I just describe your dream house? Well, you're not alone. That's basically what everyone wants here. Because so many people are relocating to the Sarasota area from different cities or even different countries, they don't want to have to deal with a fixer-upper house. You don't know the trusted companies to get work done, and unless you have the time and the tools and the knowledge to do a home remodel, most people won't even consider a dated home in the area, even if it's, quote unquote, more affordable. Everybody has that friend who's been quoted $20,000 for a kitchen remodel that turned into a $40,000 or $60,000 kitchen remodel. This has caused tons of late 90s and early 2000 homes to just kind of sit on the market for 2 or 3 or even 400 days. This right here is what causes that major discrepancy in the data that the news uses to create this, false sense of availability in the Sarasota market. I know I keep hitting you with these personal stories, but it just goes to show that this truly is a common issue that comes up. This is an email that I recently received from another client I'm currently working with after I sent him every home that fit his criteria throughout all of Sarasota. Just to let you know, his criteria is an updated 3-bed, 2-bath pool house in a good school district for their 6-year-old son and less than a 30-minute drive to the beach with a budget of up to $765,000. This really shouldn't be extremely difficult, but there are so few homes on the market currently and still enough people searching in that exact kind of thing that we could really only come up with 10 properties. And even he said it himself, of those 10, he really didn't want any of them unless he absolutely had to. As a matter of fact, he sent me another email increasing his budget to $850,000 and found the perfect house. It went pending literally around 7 days on the market. So that's why it bothers me when people say, oh, there's tons and tons of inventory for you to choose from. Really, once you put together a list of a few things you need out of a house and a community, the amount of actual viable options drastically decreases. So what else is pulling the market down in Sarasota? Well, it's definitely the condo market. As I'm sure most of you are aware by now, the condo market, it's not just in Sarasota, but Florida as a whole has been really severely impacted by, quite a few things. Of course, the terrible incident that happened in Surfside, the condo community in Miami, being a big part of it. For those of you that don't know, the Surfside condo collapsed after years of deferred maintenance, concrete deterioration, and corroded rebar kind of went overlooked. In the middle of the night, a 12-story beachfront condo partially collapsed, killing 98 people. Because of this, new state laws and regulations were put into place requiring different inspections and, more importantly, mandatory reserve funding. So now, homeowners associations are required to keep a certain amount of reserves greater than what they used to need. Because of all of these changes, we're seeing things like special assessments to fund reserves or to repair issues found by those new inspection criteria. And of course, insurance. As Florida gets hit with more and more hurricanes and stronger hurricanes, insurance companies are pulling back on coverage and limiting availability, causing prices to increase. Unfortunately, the condo market has an almost perfect storm of issues arising back to back to back to get it to this place that it is today. And in my eyes, I'm really not seeing an end in sight. People are trying to dump their condos, but with an HOA fee anywhere from $500 to $1,000 or even more, even when the condo is priced really aggressively, people don't want to take out a second mortgage payment in, HOA fees alone, especially when nobody can guarantee that those fees will actually go down, and most likely they're probably going to go up. New construction is another misinterpreted factor in the market. People believe that because there is so much building and they are hearing all about the new incentives that the builders are offering, that it must mean the beginning of a crash. But we've been seeing these steep incentives and tons of building for the past 5 years, and yet still no ends in sight. You have to remember, again, not everybody wants a brand new home in a community with no established landscaping or in a really cookie cutter community. Even I was surprised when I reached out to a Devasta community looking to get pricing on a new build for one of my clients. To my surprise, they said that they weren't doing any price reductions or any incentives at all on their properties, as they had so much demand and so very little lots available left for this specific type of property. Meanwhile, in other communities at the time, they were basically giving homes away with $100,000 price reductions, rate buy downs, cash for closing, and free pools even. So in summary, if there was one point that I needed you to take from this video, it's that every market is different and moves differently. If you have a very popular preference of property that I mentioned earlier, then don't really expect to be able to get $100,000 or $200,000 off of the price without running the risk of losing it. Condos, on the other hand, most sellers are kind of willing to take what they can get. And as for new construction, they're kind of right there in the middle. Depending on the type of floor plan and which community, there are some really amazing opportunities to get into a brand new home with a better than going rate. So if moving to Sarasota seems kind of like the right idea for you and now seems like a right time for you, I'd love to help you kind of narrow down what areas would work best for you. Here's my contact info. Feel free to reach out and check out this video over here.